The oldest story ever written begins with a king who was terrified of one single thing: death. A man lies fast asleep on a cool riverbank, and beside him grows the one and only cure for death. He has crossed the entire width of the world to find this single flower, and now he rests for one moment. Out from the wet green reed slides a long, dark snake, silent and low, drawn by the sweet scent of the plant. In a single heartbeat, it will swallow his immortality whole, and the sleeping man will never even feel it happen. This is the oldest story that humankind ever wrote down, and it ends with the quiet theft of forever. But to understand that one small snake, you first have to meet the towering king who feared no god alive. Long before Egypt, before Rome, before the Bible, one restless king went looking for the end of death. His name is Gilgamesh, and he is 2/3 god and 1/3 man, and he is entirely without mercy. He rules Uruk, the greatest city on all the earth, a vast maze of baked brick walls and blazing temples. Its ramparts rise so high and so impossibly proud that weary travelers weep at the very first sight of them. Gilgamesh built those walls with his own will, and he never once lets his people forget the weight of the gift. By day, he wrestles the strongest young men of the city and hurls them down into the dust for sport. By night, he takes whatever he desires, and no father and no husband in Uruk dares to stand in his way. He is beautiful and cruel and restless, a living storm wearing a crown, and nothing on earth can ever tire him. At last, the exhausted people of Uruk lift their voices up to the heavens and beg the gods for some relief. Far above the city, the gods listen closely, and they decide the only cure for Gilgamesh is a second Gilgamesh. To tame a wild king, the gods would first have to build a wild man. Far out in the empty wilderness, a goddess wets her hands and pinches off a heavy lump of river clay. She shapes it into a man and throws him down among the tall grasses, and he lands already running. His name is Enkidu, and he is all hair and muscle and hunger, a human being raised by no one at all. He runs with the gazelles, drinks beside them at their pools, and tears the cruel hunters' traps out of the ground. The whole wild world belongs to him, and he knows nothing of cities, of kings, of loneliness, or of death. A trembling trapper spots him and freezes solid, terrified by this giant who guards the wild herds like a brother. The trapper carries word back to Uruk, and Gilgamesh sends a temple woman named Shamhat out into the wild to find him. She waits patiently by the animal's watering hole for the wild man, calm and still as the sun crossing the sky. For 7 long days, Enkidu stays beside her, and when he finally rises, the gazelles no longer recognize him. The herds bolt away at his scent, and Enkidu stands alone, slower now, but suddenly and painfully awake to the world. Shamhat clothes him, teaches him bread and beer, and tells him of a great king who is desperate for an equal. Something deep in Enkidu catches fire at that word, king, and he sets off toward the towering walls of Uruk. 2 giants were now walking toward each other, and only one city stood between them. That very night, Gilgamesh strides through his city toward a house where he means to claim yet another bride. But in the doorway stands Enkidu, planting one enormous foot down to block the astonished king's path completely. For the first time in his whole life, Gilgamesh has met a wall of muscle that he himself did not build. They seize each other, and the fight erupts through the narrow streets, rattling every doorframe and cracking the hard ground. They crash together like 2 wild bulls, splintering timber and walls, while the entire city holds its breath in the dark. At the very last, Gilgamesh throws the wild man down, and in that strange instant something shifts between the 2 of them. The rage suddenly drains away, and 2 men who came to kill each other begin, instead of fighting, to laugh out loud. They rise to their feet as brothers, and for the first time ever, Gilgamesh is not alone at the top of the world. With a brother at his side, the king turned his hungry eyes toward glory and toward danger. But a king who finally has a brother grows hungry for glory, and the greatest glory of all lives far away. Beyond the far horizon stands the vast cedar forest, dark and forbidden, a wilderness sacred to the gods themselves. Its guardian is Humbaba, a towering monster whose voice is a roaring flood and whose burning breath is fire. Gilgamesh wants his name carved deep into eternity, and killing something no man can kill seems the surest road. Enkidu begs him again and again to turn back, for he knows this forest and the terror that keeps it. But Gilgamesh only laughs, saying that since no man lives forever, he will make his mighty deeds outlive his flesh. They march for many weeks across scorched and broken mountains, until the cedars finally rise before them like a green wall. Inside the forest, the air runs cold and still, and the ancient trees groan with a presence far older than kings. Humbaba comes roaring through the timber, vast and terrible as a black storm cloud, and the two heroes nearly break and flee. They fight him at the trembling edge of their courage until the great winds of heaven come rushing down to help them. Pinned at last and beaten, the guardian pleads for his life, offering the two heroes every cedar in his sacred domain. Enkidu says, "Finish it now," and they strike the giant down, and the whole living forest falls utterly silent forever. They fell the tallest cedar of all, floated home down the river, and Uruk cheers a triumph that seems to touch the sky. But heaven was watching, and heaven does not forgive men who kill what belongs to the gods. Washed clean and crowned in his victory, Gilgamesh shines so brightly that a goddess of heaven herself begins to desire him. Ishtar, the fierce queen of love and war, offers the king her own hand and a shining kingdom of gold. But Gilgamesh has seen exactly how her past lovers all end, broken and ruined, and he refuses her right to her face. Humiliated and furious, the goddess storms up into heaven and demands the bull of heaven be sent to crush the whole city. The bull comes down to earth, and everywhere it snorts, the ground splits wide open and swallows hundreds of screaming men. Rivers run dry, the earth cracks apart, and Uruk staggers beneath hooves that shake the very foundations of the world. But Enkidu seizes the raging beast by its enormous horns, and Gilgamesh drives the killing blow home between them. Together, the two of them bring down a creature sent straight from the gods, and the whole city roars their names to the sky. Two mortal men have now killed a divine guardian and a god's own bull, and up in heaven the gods have finally seen enough. Every glory has its price, and the gods had already chosen which brother would pay it. High up in the churning clouds, the gods gather together in anger, and they agree that a heavy price must now be paid. One of the two heroes must die for the guardian and the bull, and the terrible lot falls upon Enkidu. It begins quietly, as a fever, a strange heaviness, a cold shadow settling deep into the wild man's mighty chest. Enkidu, who once outran the gazelles and wrestled a king to the ground, now cannot even lift himself from his bed. Day after day he grows weaker, cursing the gods above, terrified of the darkness that he feels slowly closing in around him. Gilgamesh sits close beside him and, for the very first time in his entire life, feels completely and utterly powerless. He offers gold and armies and endless prayers, anything at all, but there is no wall high enough to keep death out. For 12 long days the wild man fades away, until on one gray and silent morning his breathing simply stops. Gilgamesh lays a hand on his friend's chest and feels no heartbeat there, and the strongest man alive breaks completely apart. He will not let anyone bury the body, insisting over and over that his brother is only sleeping, only sleeping. He sits beside the corpse for 7 days and 7 nights, until at last he sees the terrible truth crawl free. A single worm drops from Enkidu's still and silent face, and in that instant, Gilgamesh finally understands what death truly is. It is not glory, and it is not sleep. It is the end, cold and total, and it is coming for him too. And in that one shattering moment, the fearless king is swallowed whole by a terror that he can never hope to outrun. The greatest king in the world would now throw away his crown to chase an impossible dream. Gilgamesh tears the royal robes off his back and pulls a rough lion skin over his shaking, grieving shoulders. He walks out of the gates of Uruk completely alone, filthy and wild-eyed, no longer a king but a hunted man. He is hunting one single impossible thing, the hidden secret of how a man might never, ever have to die. He has heard of one lone mortal who was somehow granted eternal life, a distant survivor named Utnapishtim. That deathless man lives far beyond the edge of the known world, past mountains no living human has ever crossed. And so Gilgamesh walks through burning deserts and over frozen ranges, always chasing the sun as it dies each night. He comes at long last to the twin peaks of Mount Mashu, the mountains that hold up the whole sky itself. Its gate is guarded by scorpion beings, half human and half monster, who see cold death written plainly on his face. They warn him that no mortal has ever walked the sun's dark road and lived to reach the far other side. Gilgamesh begs and pleads, and at last they swing the gate open and he plunges into a tunnel of total blackness. For 12 long leagues he runs through the pitch dark along the sun's own path with no light before or behind. He runs as if the wind itself is chasing him until, at the very last moment, dawn breaks over a garden of jewels. The trees hang heavy with gems, leaves of blue lapis and fruit of red carnelian, a paradise on the rim of the world. But Gilgamesh cannot stop to rest, for his grief still rides him hard, and death still waits at the end of the road. At the shore of a bitter sea, a lone woman would offer him the wisest advice he refused to hear. At the edge of a vast and bitter sea sits a single lonely tavern kept by a veiled woman named Siduri. She bolts her heavy door at the very sight of him, this gaunt stranger with the hollow eyes of a killer. He tells her that his brother is dead and that he too will one day die, and he simply cannot bear it. Siduri gazes at the ruined king and gently tells him the hard truth that the gods keep hidden for themselves. The endless life he chases was never once given to men, for the gods kept eternity locked in their own hands alone. She tells him to go home, to fill his belly, to hold his child, to love the wife who still waits for him. But Gilgamesh cannot bear to hear any of it, and he asks her only how to cross the deadly waters ahead. Beyond this sea, she warns, lie the waters of death, which no living thing may touch and still keep on breathing. Only one strange ferryman in all the world can carry a man safely across them, a silent boatman named Urshanabi. One sea of death now stood between the king and the only man who had ever beaten it. Gilgamesh finds the ferryman standing among a grove of small stone figures at the black and lifeless water's edge. In a sudden fit of blind rage, the king smashes apart the very stone charms that could have carried him safely across. Now, Urshanabi sets him a far harder task, to cut 300 long poles from the forest with his own 2 hands. For each pole may touch the deadly killing water only one single time before it must be thrown away for good. Gilgamesh cuts them all, and together they push out onto a sea so utterly still it looks like polished, dark glass. One by one, he plants a pole, pushes the boat forward, and lets it go, driving them slowly toward the far horizon. When at last the very final pole is spent, he strips the lion skin from his back and raises it high as a sail. And there, waiting on the far shore, an old man stands watching the little boat come in across the Dead Sea. The man who once survived the drowning of the entire world was about to tell his story. Utnapishtim is impossibly ancient and utterly calm, with the deep stillness of a man who has already watched everything end. He looks at the wild-eyed king before him and quietly asks why he wears his heavy grief like torn and ruined armor. Gilgamesh pours out his whole story: the brother, the worm, the terror, and all the endless miles that lie behind him. He demands to know the secret, how a plain mortal man like Utnapishtim was ever granted a life that has no end. And so the old man begins to tell him, and his low voice carries a story far older than any king or city. Long ago, he says, the gods grew furious at the endless noise of humankind and chose to drown the entire world. One kind god whispered a secret warning to him, telling him to tear down his house and build a great wooden boat. He built an enormous ark, sealed it tight with black pitch, and loaded aboard his family and every living kind of creature. Then the whole sky went black, and a monstrous storm swallowed the world until even the gods themselves cowered in fear. For 6 days and 6 nights, the great flood raged on until every mountain and city had vanished beneath the water. When it finally calmed, he sent out a dove, then a swallow, and at last a raven that never came back to him. Dry land had risen again, and for surviving the drowning of the whole world, the grateful gods made him deathless forever. But that gift was a single frozen moment, Utnapishtim says, and the gods will never gather again to grant such a thing twice. If the king truly wished to conquer death, he would first have to conquer its gentle little brother. Even so, the old man offers Gilgamesh a single slim chance, one simple test to prove that he is worthy of forever. If a man truly wishes to defeat almighty death, he must first learn to defeat its quiet little brother, sleep. All that Gilgamesh has to do is stay fully awake for 6 days and 7 nights, sitting perfectly still. The confident king sits down, utterly certain of victory, and almost the very instant he settles, his heavy eyes fall shut. He sleeps like a man who has walked all the way to the very end of the earth, because that is what he has done. Utnapishtim watches the great king sag and slump, and turns to his wife with a knowing and deeply sorrowful look. "Bake a fresh loaf of bread," he quietly tells her, "one for each single day this proud king lies helplessly sleeping." So each day she bakes a loaf and gently sets it down beside his head, and each day that loaf slowly changes. The first turns hard, the next grows moldy, the next shrinks and shrivels, a silent calendar of the king's failure. On the 7th day, they finally wake him, and Gilgamesh swears aloud that he only closed his eyes for a single moment. Then he sees the 7 loaves lined up beside him, from soft and fresh to green to rotten, and the truth crashes down. He could not even stay awake for a single week, and now he knows that he can never stay alive forever. He had lost the test, but the old man's wife would send him home with one last impossible hope. Broken and defeated at last, Gilgamesh slowly prepares to go home to Uruk with nothing at all but his own mortality. But just as he turns to leave, Utnapishtim's wife quietly begs her husband to send the king away with a parting gift. So the old man leans in close and shares one final secret, a wonder hidden deep at the very bottom of the sea. Down there grows a strange thorny plant, sharp as a rose, that has the power to make an old man young again. It cannot ever conquer death, but it can turn back time itself, and for grieving Gilgamesh that is very nearly enough. He races to the shore, ties 2 heavy stones to his feet, and lets their weight drag him swiftly down. Down through the cold blue water he sinks, his lungs burning fiercely into the dark depths where the plant is waiting. His fingers close hard around the thorny stem and it tears at his hands, but he refuses to ever let go. He cuts the heavy stones loose and bursts back up into the light, the flower of youth held tight in his fist. For the first time since his brother died, Gilgamesh laughs out loud, holding the answer to all his deepest fear. He decides to carry it all the way home to Uruk, to give it first to an old man, to test its power. Then all of his people can grow young once more, and cold death will finally lose its grip on his beloved city. He has actually done it. He crossed the whole world, out-argued the gods, and stole youth itself from the deep dark sea. After the forest, the flood, and the deep, everything he had won came down to one careless moment. The long road home stretches on, and one warm evening Gilgamesh finds a still pool of clear and cool fresh water. Dusty and bone-tired, he carefully sets the precious plant down on the grassy bank and wades in to wash and bathe. For one single moment, just one, the flower of youth lies all alone and unguarded on the soft green ground. And out from the reeds, drawn by its sweet, warm scent, comes a long snake, gliding silent and low along the earth. It takes the flower gently in its mouth and swallows the youth of the entire world in one quiet, effortless breath. As it slips away, the snake sheds its old, dull skin and slides off young and gleaming and new once more. That is exactly why, even to this very day, the serpent renews itself, while man alone must wither, age, and fall. Gilgamesh turns around, sees the bare empty bank and the shed skin, and understands in a single instant what is now gone. He falls to his knees at the water's edge, and the strongest man in the whole wide world simply weeps. No god took it away from him, no monster stole it, just a snake and one small, careless human moment of rest. Everything, the forest, the flood, the crossing, the deep dark dive, all of it undone by a single heartbeat of rest. With empty hands and a changed heart, the king finally turned back toward the walls he had built. There is truly nothing left to chase now, and so Gilgamesh slowly turns his tired gray face back toward his home. The silent ferryman carries him across the last stretch of water, and the two of them walk the long road to Uruk. And as the great walls at last rise up on the far horizon, something deep inside the weary king finally changes. He stops and truly looks at the brick, the towers, the temples, the mighty walls he raised with his own iron will. This, he suddenly realizes, is the only immortality a man is ever truly granted, the lasting work that he leaves behind. He will die. Every single person inside those walls will die, but the walls, the city, and the story all remain. Gilgamesh walks home at last, no longer a frightened man, but a king who has finally made his peace with the end. He orders his whole story carved deep into wet clay, so that others might one day learn the very thing he learned. And that, for thousands of years, everyone believed was where the oldest story in the whole world finally went quiet forever. But a story carved deep enough in clay does not stay buried, no matter how long the world forgets it. 4,000 long years slowly pass, and the mighty walls of Uruk crumble away into dust and are wholly forgotten. The clay tablets lie buried deep in the ruins of a fallen library, silent for ages beneath a great hill of sand. Then, in the year 1872, in a quiet museum in London, a young man leans over a small broken clay tablet. His name is George Smith, and he is patiently reading a strange language that has been dead for 2,000 years. His eyes move slowly across the wedge marks, and suddenly he stops cold because he sees a boat and a great flood. He reads of a man told to build an ark, of a single dove sent out over a vast and drowned world. It is a story he knows well from the Bible, but here it is, written down more than 1,000 years earlier. They say he leaped straight up and rushed about the room, tearing at his own clothes in wild and joyful excitement. A story about the raw terror of death, buried and lost for 4,000 years, had suddenly come roaring back to life. The king who could not ever cheat death had, through his carved story, quietly done the impossible after all this time. Gilgamesh wanted so badly to live forever, and he failed, and a small snake ate his last and only chance. And yet, here we all are, thousands upon thousands of years later, still saying his ancient name aloud in the dark. So can a king ever truly outrun death? No. But if his story is carved deep enough, it can outrun him. Gilgamesh lost forever and found something that lasts even longer. The oldest story ever told is still being told.